Story 1. It was first suspected in the 1800s and accepted worldwide as fact by the 1990s. Then people with interests in oil and mining who own news stations went on a campaign to discredit it, aided by a president with many interests and friends in oil. That's the summary of the history and the only debate. Meanwhile, there's a list of islands and shorelines losing beaches. Story 2. My opinion is we are tackling it wrong. Taxing carbon emissions doesn't actually help. It just taxes poor people and hurts economic growth. It's just a literal tax grab. Promoting nuclear power and conservation and rehabilitation of wetlands and forests would do more than the current government position. I am speaking from a Canadian perspective, so please keep that in mind. Story 3. It is definitely real, but corporations and conglomerates are largely responsible. We cannot expect a singular person to make a significant dent in reducing climate change. Story 4. A long time ago, I read a 20-page paper on the origin of maize. It was one of the most boring papers that I have ever read. The only thing I got out of it was that the author had dedicated 20 years of his life to the study of corn. That dedication to something so boring was mind-blowing to me. Even though I would never dedicate myself to the study of corn, I was very appreciative that this person existed. Because if I did have any questions about corn, that's whom I would be asking. I look at climate change the same way I do corn. I will never have the dedication to study any of the evidence. There is far too much of it, and it bores me. My opinion does not matter. I am going to trust the scientists. Story 5. Climate change is a fact. Here are my beliefs about the implications. The agricultural revolution is the original underlying reason for climate change, allowing our population to expand to 9 billion. The major religions reinforce the expansionist way of life, further driving climate change. The greenest thing a person can do is choose to have 0 children, 1 child, or 2 children at most. This will reduce carbon more than anything you could buy. Climate change and pollution will force the conditions of population reduction, food shortages, infertility, pandemics, heat death, flood deaths, and disease, before we are able to form an effective global plan to reduce either of those things. The stock market is directly correlated to climate change. We cannot have continual growth and expansion while reducing the conditions of climate change. Either the stock market as we know it dies or the world dies. Story 6. That it's real and it's happening, but we mere regular folks are being told to make changes like biking or not using straws, which is crazy manipulation by megacorporations who take private jets multiple times a day and overproduce stupid and meaningless products. Story 7. Climate change is real and caused by human activity. It is already affecting the planet, and we need to act now to reduce emissions and protect the environment. Story 8. If you have beliefs, then your rural community won't brand you a witch. Go ahead and declare it's all concocted by the wicked free thinkers. Then enjoy your after-church glazed ham. Story 9. I am of the opinion that it is the magnetic poles moving. It is realigning global climate patterns. There is going to be a migration of the ice caps and where the North and South poles are located. I might get to witness this in my lifetime, but no one knows how fast they change and why they are moving faster and appearing in other locations. But it is something we will live through or die from. Just like everything else, no one gets out of this life alive. Story 10. The planet will be fine. It's just a hunk of rock floating through space. It was around long before us, and it will be around long after we're gone. What bothers me is the arrogance humans have about climate change. I believe humans are causing it, or at least accelerating it. But whether you agree with that belief or not, it is happening. We have people not believing it exists, thinking it's not my problem, and the money will fix it idea. Our governments and corporate regulating bodies are so power-hungry that no meaningful action will happen until it's too late. If we had started to act back in the 1970s or 1980s, we would have 40 or 50 years of progress in already, but instead we're still trying to convince flat Earth skeptics that it's even happening. Like I said, the planet will be fine, we're just killing our ability to live on it. Story 11. It is real and primarily driven by human activities. The effects are going to be much worse than the overwhelming majority of people believe it will be, and it is likely too late to prevent most of those effects without some nearly miraculous technical innovation. Story 12. Not sure if this was your intent, but climate change is a fact. What I believe is that we are not doing nearly enough, especially on a grand scale. I believe it will get bad, really bad. Large numbers of people are terrible at prevention and collective action for a future goal. I also believe we will learn to handle it in the long term, possibly reversing some of the effects, but not without massive damage to life on this planet. Story 13. My belief is that people by and large are climate deniers. They may support the idea and even take some action to reduce their personal greenhouse gas emissions, but are in denial about the path we are on and how the future will look. Even if we stop all emissions right now, the legacy emissions will make our future world vastly different from the one of 40 years ago. They hear of things like 2 degrees hotter than pre-industrial averages and extreme weather events and declaring climate emergencies, but not much has changed. People still plan their futures, retirements, and think about their children's futures like it's today, but with a different date. Denial. I would be happy to be wrong, and we find a fix that means a high quality of living for billions of people, but think more likely future humanity will be in the millions, with significant abandonment of parts of the world either seasonally or altogether. Story 14. It's real. There's really no doubt about it. Now, is it the world-ending catastrophe that some people claim it is and that will be extinct by 2030 or whenever? I sincerely doubt that. Story 15. What are your beliefs surrounding gravity? What are your beliefs surrounding friction? What are your beliefs surrounding the laws of thermodynamics? Story 16. For me, climate change is not only an undeniable fact, but it is also clearly human-made. We have extremely advanced equipment, piles of peer-reviewed research checked for authenticity, and many scientific communities agreeing that it is not only real, but directly caused by our technological advancements. They have even explained the mechanics of exactly how it has been happening. I find it extremely strange how many people still deny its existence, which, yes, is a belief. They believe it does not exist. They are wrong to believe that, but it is still a belief, much the way you can believe in a liar. Story 17. My beliefs are irrelevant. What matters is the scientific consensus. I hope we manage to escape the catastrophic consequences of climate change through technological developments. I've been on this planet for over 40 years now, and every year is hotter than the previous one. Story 18. I believe that there has been increasing confidence over the past 50 years for people to drive into the wrong lane on the highway of dialogue. Lane 1, public discourse, layman opinions, and curiosity. Lane 2, experts, researchers, and academics providing facts, testimony, research, and science and evidence-based recommendations. People need to stay in their lane, and not just with regards to climate change. Story 19. Doomsday prophecies from a cult that's constantly wrong. My hometown was supposed to be underwater by 2000, then 2010, then 2020. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said the world will end in 2031, but I have a feeling my drive to the beach isn't going to be any shorter. The entire reason you're calling it climate change and not global warming is because even the people who created the hoax are so doubtful about how natural climate change will go, they had to rebrand it to cover all bases. Story 20. I have a mixed view on the topic. While climate change is definitely a thing, the existence of misinformation means I do not know what is true and what is not on the topic, although I do want to educate myself more on the matter. Additionally, I feel like a lot of green power things done nowadays have adverse effects that are overlooked sometimes, such as wind turbines killing birds or affecting whales and electric cars not being eco-friendly due to the large amounts of metals needed in the batteries. Personally, I think nuclear power may be a good idea due to the absurdly high energy density. Story 21. We are in an interglacial period in the current ice age. We have been warming up since a period called the Little Ice Age, which ended in the mid-1800s. The thing is, we only began keeping detailed and accurate measurements for the last 150 years or so, a time so small geologists would consider it inconsequential. The ice sheets will return, and somebody clever will blame it on something they can make a living from. Climate scientists don't know exactly why. But the climate on Earth is not a static thing. We just think it is. Do you want to talk about pollution? That is indeed a problem. I think some scientists jump on board with the climate change issue because it addresses pollution-causing factors. I believe any company that makes any chemical should also be responsible for a plan for its safe recycling, recapture, and disposal. As far as climate change, the only climate change deniers are those who insist it shouldn't change. Story 22. Climate change is real, but I'm not convinced we have a significant impact, largely because the cycle of we will have no ice cap by a certain year, and watching people who talk about rising water levels investing in waterfront property my entire life. I didn't live during the acid rains in Los Angeles, but I agree that it was certainly man-made, so we have an effect to some degree. Climate change is too politicized, and until it stops being so, it won't be solved. The issue is we can't be honest about the facts. The United States, for all our consumption, is a drop in the bucket compared to China's pollution. As long as the world ignores this, I, along with many others, have no interest in being told I'm the problem. If people were serious about climate change, they would stop lining the pockets of the wind farms and solar farms that do massive damage to the environments they are in and go nuclear. The fears behind nuclear power have been ingrained in people for the last 60 or so years by people who understood nothing of the technology at the time, let alone today. Once nuclear is the primary power source, looking more toward electric cars becomes far more viable as well. However, I think some breakthrough with battery recycling technology is needed to prevent being in a similar situation in a few years, and likely small, cheap electrics will need to hit the market because most people I know would trust a 20-year-old gas or diesel car to get them to work, but not a 20-year-old electric. In summary, change is real and we have some impact, but because of the actions and bad predictions of those vocal about climate change, they can't be trusted. Politicizing the issue breeds apathy. Nuclear is the way forward, and electric cars need recycling technology. Story 23. It's happening, but its dangers are blown way out of proportion. Also, as soon as someone advocating for alternative energies says they are against nuclear, I assume they are either lacking in intelligence or are a shill. The only way to realistically phase out fossil fuels is via nuclear power plants. I also think it would be more beneficial to spend the money we are putting towards things like solar and wind towards fusion research and battery technology. Battery technology has stalled, and without it, both solar and wind are only good as supplemental power at best. Story 24. I believe that the scientists who are subject matter experts know more about it than I could put together in years of effort just trying to catch up, so I believe whatever they tell me. Story 25. It's real. It's happening. Even idiots get that. The debate is whether or not humans are speeding it up. The scientific community says yes. The idiots say no. Me, probably. Story 26. Facts are facts. The only beliefs are what you choose to do with them. My belief is that it would be morally reprehensible to have children in the world the baby boomer generation has created. Story 27. Things won't get better until the elitists let it. There is a designed reason why things that are bad for us and the environment are cheaper than alternatives that would help the planet. Money will be the reason our world ends. Story 28. There's an overwhelming amount of scientific evidence that the theory of human-made climate change is accurate. A mistake that many well-meaning people made in the last decade is that they used religious terms when discussing climate change. This is not how scientific processes operate. Story 29. I believe that when the deniers finally understand the consequences of their position, it will be too late to start to do something about it. I'm older and I'll be fine, but they hurt their grandkids badly. Story 30. Climate changes. The more people there are, the more industrial activities we do, the more we affect it too. I believe we've gone far enough and we're not stopping. It will be getting worse. Luckily, I will be dead in about 60 years. Story 31. It's happening. We're on the fast track, and there is no turning back. So there are leaders in place that know this and are depleting this planet until our demise. Anyway, I got a 3% pay raise at work, so that's cool. Story 32. I believe that there is no question about whether or not it's occurring. I believe we can and should have ample discussion about the best way to prevent or solve it. Story 33. I can't do anything to change it, neither can any of you. Companies and governments and corporations are the ones who have the power, and people who fly on private jets as well. Story 34. I believe the science and the facts and don't have to worry about faith. thankfully. Human-induced climate change is demonstrable and verifiable, regardless of the lack of belief, much like the sun is still the center of the solar system regardless of religious persecution of those who said otherwise centuries ago. Story 35. I believe the Earth has not changed for billions of years, no plate tectonics or volcanism, no precession of the Earth's orbit, no changes in the sun's output, no changes in the composition of the atmosphere, nothing. The temperature of the Earth has never changed and is tied directly into one of those old Honeywell mercury thermostats in God's office. He's just messing with us for kicks. That's what I believe. Story 36. My belief is that human beings are not taking climate change as seriously as it needs to be taken. My belief is that we will not take sufficient action until it is too late for us. Enormous avoidable economic damage has already taken place with wildfires, more powerful hurricanes, drought, and heavier rainfall, to name just a few problems climate change brings. And if we stopped emitting greenhouse gases tomorrow, we still have decades of warming ahead of us with the greenhouse gases we have already released into the atmosphere. My belief about climate change is that we lack the leadership, foresight, and willingness to change to meet this crisis.